He had built his life on certainty, numbers that always added up, decisions that always led somewhere predictable. But the one thing he could never control sat quietly across from him, reminding him every day that not everything followed his rules. She didn't speak much, she didn't need to. Her world was different, shaped by sound, by feeling, by small details most people overlooked. He had given her everything money could provide, the best care, the best specialists, the most advanced support, yet none of it filled the space between them. That quiet distance stayed, untouched, no matter how much he tried to close it. That afternoon, the restaurant was just another stop, a place chosen out of convenience, not meaning. He barely noticed the surroundings as they sat down. His attention shifted constantly. Phone calls, messages, the next meeting already waiting in his mind. Across from him, his daughter sat still, her hands resting lightly on the table, her head tilted slightly as if listening to something he couldn't hear. When the waitress approached, her presence was subtle but steady. She greeted them without hesitation, her tone calm, natural. There was no awkward pause when she realized the girl couldn't see, no shift into forced sympathy. Instead, she spoke with care, describing the menu in a way that felt almost visual. Textures, sounds, even the warmth of certain dishes. For the first time since they sat down, his daughter reacted. It was small, just a slight turn of her head, a quiet focus in her expression. But it was enough to catch his attention. He lowered his phone slowly, watching as the waitress continued, her voice even and patient. Some dishes have a soft crunch, she said gently, and others are smooth, like they melt the moment you taste them. His daughter's fingers moved slightly against the table, almost as if she could feel the description. He frowned, not in disapproval but in confusion. It wasn't anything extraordinary, just words. Yet somehow, they reached her in a way nothing else had. The order was placed, and the waitress stepped away, leaving behind a quiet shift in the air. He glanced at his daughter, noticing the way she seemed more present now, more aware. It was subtle, but undeniable. The full stray för folkavanda för a profer från wine. "Do you like it here?" he asked, his voice careful. She didn't answer right away. Softly, she said, "It sounds different." The word lingered. He leaned back slightly, his thoughts pausing for the first time that day. Different wasn't something he usually aimed for. His world was built on precision, on control. But as he looked around, listening more carefully, he realized what she meant, the low hum of conversation, the faint clinking of glasses, a distant melody playing somewhere in the background. It wasn't silence. It was life. When the waitress returned with their food, she placed everything carefully, guiding his daughter's hands just enough for her to understand the space without overwhelming her. Again, there was no hesitation, no over-explanation, just a quiet understanding of what was needed. And once again, his daughter, she leaned forward slightly, her attention fixed not on the food, but on the voice guiding her. Something about that moment unsettled him, not in a negative way, but in a way he couldn't explain. Because for all the resources he had, for everything he had tried, had never seen her respond like this. Not this naturally, not this easily. He picked up his glass slowly, his gaze shifting between them, a thought forming quietly in his mind. Maybe control wasn't the answer, and maybe, just maybe, he had been looking in the wrong direction all along. He told himself it was just a small moment, a passing interaction that didn't mean anything beyond good service. But as the meal continued, he found it harder to return to his usual rhythm. His phone remained untouched, the constant stream of notifications suddenly less important than what was happening right in front of him. The waitress came back, not rushed, not distracted. He moved with the same calm presence, as if the noise of the restaurant didn't affect her at all. When she spoke again, it wasn't just to ask if everything was fine. She paused for a second, noticing the way his daughter's fingers tapped lightly against the table in a steady pattern. "You like rhythm," she said softly. It wasn't a question, it was an observation. His daughter's tapping slowed, then stopped. She tilted her head slightly, listening more closely, as if trying to understand what the words meant. He watched carefully, unsure of where this was going. The waitress smiled gently, then without hesitation, she began to hum. It was a simple tune, quiet enough that it didn't interrupt the room, but clear enough to be felt. The melody was steady, warm, easy to follow. Nothing complicated, just sound shaped with care. At first, his daughter didn't react. Then, slowly, something changed. Talk changed. Her shoulders relaxed. Her head turned slightly toward the sound. The faintest expression appeared on her face. Not quite a smile, but something close. Her fingers began to move again, this time in sync with the rhythm. He leaned forward, barely breathing, afraid to break the moment. The humming continued for a few seconds more. Then it stopped. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was waiting. His daughter hesitated. Quietly, almost unsure of herself, she tried to follow the tune. Her voice was soft, unsteady at first. It was there, real clear. It filled the space between them in a way nothing else ever had. He froze. For a second, he thought he imagined it. But when she continued, a little more confident this time, he realized it was real. She wasn't just responding. She was participating, creating something of her own. The waitress didn't interrupt. She simply nodded, encouraging without pressure, letting the girl find her own pace. And just like that, something opened. Connection, not forced, Barita connection, not forced, not planned, natural. He sat back slowly, his mind struggling to catch up with what he was seeing. Years of effort. Endless attempts to reach her, to bring her out of that quiet space she lived in. And now, in a matter of minutes, a simple melody had done what nothing else could. It didn't make sense, but it didn't need to. When the moment ended, his daughter grew quiet again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. There was something lighter in it, something alive. The waitress stepped back slightly, giving space as if nothing unusual had happened, but he knew better. He looked at her, really looked this time, not as staff, not as someone passing through his day, but as someone who had just done something he couldn't explain. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice lower than usual. She shrugged slightly, her expression calm. "I didn't," she said. 404 Cussor la Corner 404. "I just listened." The answer stayed with him, because for the first time, he realized something simple and uncomfortable. He had spent years trying to be heard, but he had never truly listened. He couldn't forget it. The sound of her voice, soft, uncertain but real, stayed with him long after they left the restaurant. It replayed in his mind during meetings, in quiet car rides, even in the silence of his own home. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't trained, but it was something he had been waiting to hear for years. He didn't understand why it happened there. Days passed, but the question didn't fade. Instead, it grew stronger. Until finally, without overthinking it, he made a decision he normally wouldn't. He went back. The restaurant looked the same quiet atmosphere, the same low hum of conversations. But this time, he noticed more. The small details, the rhythm of the space, the way sound moved through it, and most importantly, he noticed her. The waitress was working as usual, moving between tables with the same calm presence. She didn't seem surprised to see them again. No reaction beyond a simple greeting, as if they were just returning customers. But his daughter reacted immediately. She turned her head toward the voice, recognition settling in faster than words. Her posture shifted, more alert, more engaged. That alone was enough to confirm what he had been thinking. This wasn't a coincidence. They sat down again, but this time, everything felt different. He wasn't distracted. His phone stayed in his attention stayed where it should have been, from his daughter to the woman who had somehow reached her. When the waitress returned, she didn't rush into anything. No assumptions, no repeated actions. She simply spoke, allowing the moment to unfold naturally. "You came back," she said softly. Daughter nodded, a small but clear response. And just like that, the connection was there again, stronger than before. The waitress glanced at her for a moment, then gently tapped her fingers against the table, creating a soft rhythm, not loud, not demanding, just enough to guide. "Can you follow this?" she asked. His daughter hesitated, then slowly mirrored the pattern. Tap, pause, tap, tap. It wasn't perfect, but it was close. "Good," the waitress said quietly. "Now try with your voice." There was no pressure in her tone, no expectation, just an invitation. The girl took a small breath, then tried. This time her voice came out steadier, still soft, still careful, but more confident than before. She followed the rhythm, shaping the sound in a way that felt intentional. He watched, completely still. Every instinct in him wanted to step in, to guide, to correct, but he didn't. For once, he stayed back, and in doing so, he saw something he had been missing all along. Didn't need control. She needed space. The waitress continued, guiding gently, adjusting the rhythm, letting the girl explore without fear of getting it wrong. Each attempt grew a little stronger, a little clearer. Minutes passed, but they felt different. Not like time being spent, but like something being built. And for the first time, he understood what made this work. It wasn't about technique. It wasn't about skill. It was about trust. His daughter wasn't afraid to try here. She wasn't worried about failing, about not meeting expectations. She was simply responding to sound, to presence, to someone who saw her not as limited, but as capable. He felt something shift inside him then, not just as a father, but as a person. All this time, he had been trying to give her more, but he had never considered giving her less. Less pressure, less control, less expectation. When the moment slowed, he leaned back slightly, taking it all in. The quiet progress, the small victories that meant more than anything he had ever achieved in a boardroom. And as he watched them, one thought became clear. This wasn't just changing his daughter, it was changing him. He stopped trying to control the moment. For the first time in years, he allowed something to unfold without stepping in, without shaping it into what he thought it should be. He simply watched, listened, and in doing so, he began to understand something he had missed for far too long. Daughter wasn't distant. She was waiting for space, waiting for patience, waiting for someone to meet her where she was, instead of pulling her somewhere else. The waitress continued guiding her gently, her voice steady, her approach unchanged. No rush, no pressure, just small steps repeated with care. Each note his daughter attempted carried more confidence than the last. It wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It was hers. That realization stayed with him. He had spent years chasing perfection, results, outcomes, progress he could measure. But here, in this simple exchange, progress looked different. It was quiet, subtle, built on moments most people would overlook. The practice slowed. The waitress stepped back slightly, giving his daughter a chance to settle into the silence again. This time, the silence wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. His daughter sat still for a second, then turned slightly in his direction. "Did you hear that?" she asked softly. The question caught him off guard, not because of the words, but because of the tone. There was something new in it, a quiet confidence, a small spark of pride. He nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "I did," he said. "You sounded strong." She smiled. It wasn't wide, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real, and for him, that was enough. He stood up slowly, walking a few steps closer to where the waitress stood. For a moment, he didn't speak. Words had always come easily to him, negotiations, decisions, instructions, but this felt different. 2 words, nothing more, but they carried something he wasn't used to expressing. Not authority, not expectation, just gratitude. The waitress nodded slightly, her expression calm. "She's doing the work," she replied. "I'm just helping her hear it." He looked back at his daughter, watching her sit a little straighter, a little more present than before, and that's when it fully settled in. All his life, he had believed that change came from power, from influence, from resources, from control. But this came from something else entirely: attention, care, time, things he had always had, but never used in the right way. As they prepared to leave, his daughter reached for his hand without hesitation. The gesture was small, but it stopped him for a second. She hadn't done that in a long time. He held it gently, not tightening, not guiding, just holding. Outside was the same as always. Just holding you per. The world was the same as always, unchanging. But for him, everything felt different, because he wasn't walking away with a solution. He was walking away with understanding, and sometimes that changes everything.